Hi, I'm Becca, and this is my husband, Gabe.
That's me.
Welcome to the podcast celebrating Jack Russell Terrier dogs.
And all the joys of companionship with canines of every kind.
Each week, we'll explore all the heartfelt, humbling, and hilarious stories that only dog parents can truly relate to. We're Jack Russell parents. Hey, Gabe, what do you call a pig on a leash?
What?
Pulled pork.
Oh, my goodness. Do you have any more leash jokes?
I do. You know, when I was little, I saw this kid in my neighborhood dragging around a loaf of sourdough on a leash. To be funny, I said, "Hey, you have a beautiful dog." He responded, "Thanks, it's purebred."
Wow.
You're welcome.
So I take it we're talking about leashes today? Something about walking leashes?
Yeah, dogs being on a leash. You got it. Today we are so stinking excited to have superb dog trainer Susan Light of Doggy Dojo back in the house.
Whoop, whoop.
And she is going to share her insight, tips, and tricks for dogs who are leash reactive. Because Carson, our JRT, he loves going on walks, but he has to be on a leash. And sometimes he gets a little defensive towards other dogs.
He has a right to be, and we'll find out why.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to all the amazing advice she has to say, because we really need it.
Yes.
As a lot of you Jack Russell parents probably do as well. But first, let's get to our Insta Dog of the Week.
Yay, let's do it. Who do we have this week?
None other than the amazing, the hilarious Pang Pang the London Pug. You heard me right. Pang Pang the Pug. That's at P-A-N-G, the Pug.
Awesome. So let's take a look at his bio. He is officially a public figure, y'all, as he should be. He is a London dog model and actor. You can follow his pup ventures on Instagram, of course, and elsewhere. But he is here to make you smile. He also, relatively recently, I believe, was on ITV's The Pet Show.
That's a big deal. ITV, that's like their biggest network in London.
So there are story highlights across the top, and one of which is fan art. And it's just so cute because there's everything from really like amazingly drawn. Like that looks like him, but in pencil, right? And then there's some more artistic renderings, you know, like
a little bit of
interpretations. Yes. but I really encourage you to look because he's got a lot of fan art. So there's all these different versions of him. It's like him as a cartoon, him really realistic, super, super fun stuff. So take a look at that on their story highlights. You will not be able to get enough of this squishy little face. So Gabe, looking through these amazing posts, what's your favorite?
It's hard to pick, as always, but I love the pictures and the videos of Pang Pang in his Union Jack flag hoodie.
Yeah.
He's so patriotic. My favorite video has to be the one where he comes bombing around a corner and slides to a stop in front of his food bowl.
And his jacket.
He's wearing his hoodie. It doesn't stop him, not for a second.
Got it. It's so cute. Well, that goes with a couple of my favorites as well. So they do a great job of capturing Pang Pang in motion. Okay, there's lots of videos. And I have two favorites. They're both videos and they're both about eating. So one of the videos is him chomping a raspberry, and it starts with a very, very close up of him and this little red raspberry in front of him. And he really just gobbles it down. And it says, "Who has the hungriest eyes of them all?" Pang Pang does.
Oh, I bet.
And then the other one that I love has to do with him chomping a blueberry.
He keeps it organic. Keeps it vegan.
He does. It's like this video is like a long shot where he comes running from a distance, but you see the blueberry, you know what he's after. And he comes running toward the camera and he just gobbles up that blueberry. The boy loves him some fruit. That's all I gotta say. Be sure to follow and give some love to the ridiculously adorable Pang Pang the Pug. That's at Pang Pang the Pug. All one word.
Now snuggle up with your pup and get ready for some important training advice from certified dog trainer and fellow podcaster, Susan Light.
We have with us today certified dog trainer and legit podcaster, founder of Doggy Dojo, Susan Light. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
So how has this new year been treating you so far?
So far, good. Getting really busy. We were wondering if people would get Christmas dogs this year since so many people got dogs the last few years. And I think so, because I'm getting swamped again.
Yeah.
The trend has not abated.
No, I don't know what that is about. Everybody needs a dog for Christmas, but it's a busy time of year.
Yeah. Well, we already talked a little bit about what's new since our last interview, but
So officially, for the podcast's sake, what's new since your last interview with us?
I actually got a new certification through the CPDT. I got my CPDTKA. So now I'm double certified as a dog trainer.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was excited about that. And then on a personal note, I lost one of my kitties, unfortunately, this summer. And then we adopted another kitty. I wasn't expecting to. It's interesting because when something happens to you, you start noticing it. And I noticed a lot of people that I know or that I talked to online lost pets this year. And so many got another pet really quickly. And before I lost Wally, I was like, whoa, it seemed like really insensitive.
Yeah.
I was like, why would you do that? And it's a very interesting thing unless you've gone through it. But it helps.
Yeah.
It helps with your mourning, I think, to pour into another pet.
Yeah.
You can't replace them. You're not replacing your pet.
Right. You're just bringing in some more love, some new love.
It's got to be the worst part of having pets and loving them is, when they leave us. It's nothing we can do anything about. And it doesn't undo I got 13 amazing years with them. I was hoping for 20.
Yeah.
I was hoping for 20, but
13's pretty good.
Yeah. There's an amazing artist, Nancy. I commissioned her to do drawings of all 3 cats, and they're amazing.
Aww.
She did such an amazing job. And so now I have them up on my wall, and it's nice to see them every day.
That's sweet. I love that. Gabriel had someone do a portrait of Carson last year, I think, that I have in my office. They capture them quite well. So when we asked you what the hottest issue is that you have encountered in the training world, you mentioned reactivity. We had talked with you previously about reactivity in relation to barking. So let's continue that conversation, but maybe with the focus more on leash reactivity. That I think maybe we aren't using the correct term, but we say like leash defensiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So what does leash reactivity look like in a dog?
Leash defensiveness is actually not a term I've heard, but it's not a bad use for it. But we say leash reactivity. It looks a lot like barking and lunging towards the end of the leash.
Mm-hmm.
So very similar to the reactivity we talked about. Since barking is a major symptom, it's part of it.
Yeah.
But also when we were talking about like Carson barking at the mailman, we tend to call that barrier reactivity or dogs that are barking on their fence. Like if you leave your dog in the backyard and you bark every time somebody goes past the fence,
Right.
We call that barrier reactivity. So leash reactivity is very specific to you're out walking your dog on the leash and they see something and they bark and they lunge to the end of the leash.
Yes. So that is what Carson does.
It's so common. My episode last season on leash reactivity is still the most downloaded episode. And
Wow.
It tells me that, and it's probably, it's like half of the cases that I see in person as well.
Yeah.
So it's super, super common.
Yeah, it's a sore point for us because when Carson was little, he loved everybody and everything. He'd walk up to cats as if they were dogs. He loved every person, every dog.
Mm-hmm.
While on
And
a leash.
then life has jaded his little heart. He's not friendly with everyone anymore.
No, it's almost like he gets defensive, like preemptively,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm going to be tough so you don't come after me because he's been attacked a couple of times.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did want to say, and I'm glad you guys mentioned that, is that if you're dealing with leash reactivity, depending on how severe it is, you can just manage it and live with it. And a lot of people do. But if you want to actually make progress with leash reactivity, you need to be working with a trainer because it's really easy to make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse until you can't walk your dog anymore.
Yeah.
So what are common causes of leash reactivity?
There's nuance, obviously, but I find reactivity has 2 roots, and one is fear and the other is frustration. And you can actually see both in the same dog because it's situational. Frustration-based reactivity would be like the very social puppies that just want to go say hi to every dog they see.
Yeah.
Or also the dog that wants to chase the squirrel that they just saw on the tree. right? So that's frustration based. They're like, get me off this leash so I can go do the thing I want to do.
Yeah.
That's frustration based reactivity. And then there's fear based reactivity, where even though it seems very aggressive, it's like you said, defensive. They're actually trying to say, stay away from me, I'm scary, because they're afraid.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And so you can see both in the same dog in different situations where they're frustrated because they want to chase the squirrel and then they're scared of the other dog or they're afraid of something else. But more often than not, we'll see one or the other. The frustration being in the young dogs that are very, very social, and the fear-based in really any age dog.
Yeah.
For Carson, when his frustration comes out, he's like that little toddler in the grocery store. He'll just lie down in the aisle.
Oh my gosh.
He'll lie down in the
little
middle of the
tantrum.
street. Yeah, he'll lie down in the street and he will not move.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're kidding me.
Well, at least you could pick him up. Worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a bigger dog.
Yeah, that's true. That would be worse.
Yeah. And that's another reason to work with a trainer is if you have a large muscular dog, reactivity gets very scary.
Yeah.
Scary for you. You can actually get injured trying to hold your dog back, depending on how determined they are pulling on you.
Yeah.
The dog can get injured, straining against, depending on what kind of equipment you're using.
Right.
And then, of course, depending on the severity, were they to actually get to what they're trying to get to, the other dog or whatever.
Right.
Obviously, there's an opportunity for them to bite them. Lots of reasons to make sure that you're working with a trainer.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what are the best ways to treat or cope with this?
Yeah. So the first step is going to the vet. Take your dog to the vet. Anytime you're looking at a behavior that is undesirable, you actually first want to make sure there's not a medical issue. That's true if you just adopted this dog. And it's also true if it's a new behavior. It's especially true if it's a new behavior, because dogs are really good at covering sickness and injury and pain.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of times those things show up as behaviors. That's number one.
Gotcha.
This is why we go in this order, is because at each of these steps, it may solve your problem without moving on to the next step.
Right.
If there's a medical reason, you're done. You get the dog treatment and you're done. And also a lot of times, if it's not completely curing it, it's helping the severity. So a dog that's in pain is going to be extra grumpy,
Right.
So they're going to be harder to deal with. So start at the vet.
Okay.
And number two is management. So we talked about this with the barking. You want to make sure that they can't practice the behavior. So if management for your dog means you can't go on walks, then that's what it means. That means you just pop out for potty breaks and we don't go on walks, because we don't want them practicing this behavior, because every time you practice something, you're building neural pathways in the brain and creating a habit.
Yeah.
And it gets stronger and stronger. So this is how you can make it worse. You just keep doing it over and over again. It's like you said, suddenly now Carson's preemptively barking at them anytime he sees them because he's in that habit. So the second step is always management. To make real behavior change, you have to stop them from rehearsing the behavior.
Yeah.
And then the third step is you got to make sure you're meeting the dog's needs. If you can't take your dog on a walk, they still need exercise, right? So you're going to make sure that you're meeting that need some other way, with some fetch or some tug or a flirt pull or some other ways that you can exercise them. All behavior has a function. That behavior, believe it or not, that you don't like is telling you that they have an unmet need.
That's very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to find out how to meet that need in a better way.
Mm-hmm.
We call this step enrichment. And I'm sure you've heard that phrase, canine enrichment. And there are Facebook groups about canine enrichment, and there are books. And it's really, really about meeting the dog's needs. I think people get distracted by like puzzle feeders. And they think that's all enrichment is. And puzzle feeding is great because it's like foraging and it's mental stimulation. And so it's a big part of meeting a dog's needs, but it's not the only part of enrichment. There's a great book called Canine Enrichment for the Real World, which I totally recommend. Emily Strong and Allie Bender wrote it, and they break it down. It's like 12 or 13 aspects or needs that dogs have that can be met And they give you ideas of how to meet them. One of them is safety and security, which we're going to talk about. One of them is mental stimulation. One is physical stimulation, sociability, things like that. And so you can go down the list and say, are we meeting that need? Here's some ways through enrichment that I can try to meet that need.
Gotcha.
And so if you meet all your dog's needs, they don't have to go out and try to meet them themselves in a way that you don't care for.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Fourth step, which is we're going to do counter conditioning and desensitization. And that's where we need to know whether it's frustration or fear-based, because we can go back to that third step and say, okay, if it's frustration because they want to go meet the dogs, that they need some social interaction. You have a social dog. So you need to find a way to meet that. And it's not by saying hi to all the dogs you see on leashes when you walk.
Right. Yes. Agreed.
I actually tell my clients to stop letting dogs say hi to dogs on leashes. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Because whichever cause of reactivity that your dog has, stopping the on-leash greetings will help with either one. Because if they're social and they want to go say hi to this dog, as soon as you break the habit and say, no, we don't say hi to dogs when we're on leash. We play with dogs in the backyard that we invited over, or other, safe social interactions that are off leash. Then they stop getting frustrated because they stop thinking that you're going to go see that dog. The worst thing you can do is go see the dog sometimes.
Yeah.
And not other times, because then they're frustrated. They have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's one of the things that's the most difficult with walking them is someone else.
Yeah.
We don't all feel the same way about it.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
And so I'm putting my hand up like, stop, like, don't approach me, please.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm sure your dog's great and all, but I don't know how my dog's going to react, and I don't want there to be an issue. So just please stay on your side of the street. And so I feel like people think that I'm rude most of the time, but I'm just like, look, I can't afford an incident.
And you know what kills me is when you do all this, you're like, no, and they come anyway, and then they get all offended that your dog barks at them.
Yes.
And it's like, I was trying to tell you that this was going to happen.
Yes.
There's actually whole niches that have sprung up with like clothes and harnesses and leashes that are like, leave us alone. Don't talk to us. Don't greet us. My dog doesn't want to say hi. And that shows that people are dumb and won't listen to you when you just tell them not to say hi to your dog. Right. So it's human nature. We're like gravity towards dogs, which is great because we love them. But you're absolutely right. You have to be the one that says, we can't say hi. What's great is in coronavirus, now you can sort of cross the street. Right. When you see them coming and seem a little less rude. That's right. I teach my dogs an emergency U-turn. So if you see someone, you just turn around.
That's when Carson lies down in the street.
Yeah.
So he's like,
people think that he's very well behaved, that we train him to lie down and
when
until
he sees
someone
them coming.
passes. But he does that because he will refuse
can't pull
do a
him,
U-turn. He wants to say hello to people.
Yeah. So you want to meet that social need of his in another way and teach him, like, we're not going to do this on the leash, but we're still going to meet that need for you. So that I think is hard for people because you need to meet people with dogs that are convenient to you so that they can hang out. I think it's great for dogs to have friends. Dogs are usually like people on a social spectrum. Some dogs all the way on one end are truly aggressive. And if they get near any dog, they're going to bite them. Okay. That's an aggressive dog. That's pretty rare, to be honest, but they do exist. And then on the other end of the spectrum and most dogs start out here, is the super, super friendly to everyone. Anything, loves everybody. Can't upset them, super social dog. Mm-hmm. But most dogs fall somewhere in between, where they like some dogs and they don't like other dogs. They like some people and they don't like other people. They can handle 2 or 3 dogs, but you throw them in the dog park with 50 and it's too much. And that's all normal. That's all normal to have on that spectrum.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but you want to meet that need wherever that is. And then if the frustration is prey drive, right, because they want to chase squirrels and things, then you want to obviously teach them a good leave it and a good drop it, but you want to give them some enrichment that falls into that hunting, prey, chasing thing so that they can still do that.
Yeah.
You're not going to train out prey drive from a dog. It's hardwired into their genetics.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially Jack Russell, man.
So exactly. And then, so all of that is to get us to what we would consider, quote unquote, the actual training part, where we're going to train them to hopefully be less reactive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the counter conditioning and desensitization. But you can see like all these parts that go into an actual like behavior plan to try to make behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
When we set up management, we said we're not going to put them in a situation. Depending on how reactive your dog is, you might be able to walk them as long as you stay at least 20 feet from other things, turning around, crossing the street, whatever. But then when you're ready to actually train and desensitize and counter condition, you want to make sure you have like the yummiest, best treats ever.
Yeah.
It takes a very, very high value treat, which, you know, I would say like cheese or beet or something very, very smelly, but every dog will determine that themselves. This is not time for Cheerios, kibble, dry milk bones at all. This has to be like something super, super yummy, super tasty, super smelly. And we're going to do a game called Look at That. And that is the cornerstone of desensitization work. Something that I teach my clients very, very first time that I meet them is look and touch. Is that something you guys ever taught Carson?
Okay, maybe he does not look at me.
You might have a different cue for it. Focus is another one that people use for it. Whatever you use, it's basically a cue for your dog to look at you and to hold your eye contact. And then touch is a hand target where they bop their nose on your outstretched hand, right? So I hold out my hand and they bop their nose on it, touch. Super, super useful skill. And what's great about those two skills is they redirect their focus. So look, obviously they have to look at you and they have to look away from whatever they're looking at to look at you. And touch, they have to physically move their body to touch your hand target. And so those are two things that we use to redirect a dog without yanking them on their leash.
We've actually done that unofficially, now that I come to think of it.
Yeah.
Becca's it's look at me. She does that to me too. Look at me. Right.
You've got Gabe trained.
That's right.
And for Carson, we do give a kiss. So we put our hand out and he gives
Yeah,
a kiss.
that's right.
It works. It really calms him down in a lot of situations.
Yeah. So I literally do this. It's the first thing I teach anybody. And I use it all the time. All the time. There's so many contexts that you can use it. And counter conditioning and desensitization is definitely one of them.
We'll take a pause here and we'll be right back with some more insightful tips from Susan Light of the Doggy Dojo podcast.
"11-year-old Walter just may die of boredom doing the most boring summer ever. While exploring an abandoned garden, Walter discovers a mystical elf world where all dead plants spring to life at his touch. The downtrodden elves think Walter is there to save them with his new life-giving powers, to defeat the wicked Ichabod van Snothoof before he sucks everyone's joy dry with his never-ending list of rules. Walter will need to use his best power yet, his imagination. In a dying, oppressed world, one boy has the power to bring freedom and life. Walter Plume and the Dehydrated Imagination will take you and your middle grade reader on a thrilling journey while igniting the depths of your imagination. Boys the Book says beautiful imagery leads to spectacular world building in this fantasy that will leave the young reader glued to the pages. Relatable characters add to the magic of the story with never a dull moment. Get your magical fingers on a copy of Walter Plume and the Dehydrated Imagination by Rebecca Lynn Morales, now at Amazon.com. Find out more at walterplume.com. Let Walter and his story awaken your beautiful and creative imagination.
We are back to finish answering your questions about how to deal with leash reactivity with your dog.
The first thing to understand is a concept called threshold, which we talked about this a little bit when we talked about barking, which is like when they're losing at barking, they're not going to listen to when you say quiet. right?
Right.
Even if it's something that they know, because they're over threshold. And that just means they're not in their thinking part of their brain. They're in their instinctual part of their brain. Their hormones have taken over. It's that fight, flight, freeze thing, right? So we want to keep them in their thinking brain. And we just call that being under threshold. And that's a super important part of dealing with reactivity, because it's only when they're in their thinking part of their brain that we can start to try to convince them that these things are not dangerous, that they're afraid of. So we use that with look at that. And the basic of look at that is they look at, so we call it a stimulus. So whatever it is, the squirrel, the other dog, the person, the mailman, whatever it is that causes that reactivity, the barking, the lunging, whatever, they look at it and they look back at you without the barking, crazy reactivity. And that's a rep. And they get a yummy best treat they ever had for that. And you have to do that enough times where they're far enough away that they start to actually really look at it. And then they sort of think, oh, why was I freaked out about that? Right? It sounds simple. It takes a long time, but that's the concept behind it, right? So the idea is you have to have enough distance is usually what we use to keep them under threshold. So if they're 50 feet away and they're able to look at that dog calmly, then ask for a look back at you, and then they get the treat. And then you just wait. You wait for them to look back at it, and then look back at you. And when you do it enough times, it actually becomes a cue to them.
Okay.
To every time they see something that makes them nervous, to look back at you. And when they get some comfort and some treats from you, be like, yeah, everything's fine. That helps them feel more confident and more safe. And so then you're able to sort of shrink the distance slowly, but you're always watching them, always watching them. If they've started barking and freaking out, it's too close.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at that point, go ahead. You can try to give them a treat. You don't even have to ask for them to look away. Just go ahead and try to give them a treat, because the act of eating will actually calm them down enough that you may be able to then get them to look at you and walk away. If they won't take the treat, that's when you're doing the U-turn, trying to get as far out of there as you can. This is where we tend to make the mistake, and we pull on their leash, right? And try to yank them away or yell at them, stop, stop. And that's where we make it worse, because instead of pairing that thing they're afraid of with, I'm calm, how are you? Here's a lovely treat. Oh, everything's safe. We're pairing it with, oh my God, I'm getting yanked. I'm getting yelled at. This is the worst.
Gotcha. It's too late to try it. Yeah.
All that emotion into the next time they see it. And that's how it gets worse instead of better.
Right. Right.
Wow.
And that's also why, especially for reactivity. Now, I don't think you should use these tools ever, aversive tools, but especially for reactivity and especially anything based in fear, using aversive prong collars, shock collars, slip collars, just make it worse.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because, they're already in this fear state and you're hurting them. You're causing them this discomfort. I see it all the time. People just yanking on their dogs in prong collars or shocking their dogs, being like, shut up. If you think about what you're doing to this dog, you're just spiraling down. And this is actually can create an actual aggressive dog that just keeps escalating it to where every time they see something, they're so freaked out.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where you get the dogs that sometimes have to be put down. I'm not saying that reactive people create, or owners of reactive dogs create reactivity by any means, because I've told you how common it is, right? It's super, super common. But people who try to punish dogs that are experiencing fear make it worse. That's just the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So you want to try to keep them under threshold, lots of distance, and that look, touch, and emergency U-turn to try to exit yourself out of a situation. If they came towards you too fast, or you thought they could handle it, but they freak out, to just try to get out of it in as easy, quick, and positive way as you can, so that you're not yanking, yelling, making it worse.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
A lot of great advice. A lot of good marriage advice as well.
It's amazing how much animal behavior and human behavior is similar.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that. If you're afraid about something as a person, and then you get, I'm going to use the word abused, frankly, like then you get hit or abused during that while you're already afraid, that ain't going to help anything.
Yeah. And it also isn't going to help your frustration. Like
Yeah.
if it's based in frustration, it's the same thing. It's like the other day, was trying to airdrop something and it wouldn't work. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And I was like, why isn't this working?
Yeah.
Like if somebody had smacked me right then, would not have made me feel better.
It would have escalated it, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like people discount frustration as something that our animals feel. When you are frustrated, it's a horrible feeling.
It is. You're right.
It's a horrible feeling and you can't do anything about it and you don't understand what's happening. That's where these, especially young dogs or high prey dogs that are trying to get to things when they're on the leash, the look at that works because it's just teaching them that we're not going to chase it and you can be calm around it. So that's why it doesn't really matter if it's frustration or fear. The protocol's the same.
Yeah.
But again, you always want to be as positive as you can. We're trying to recondition, classic condition, pairing something that frustrates or makes them afraid with good things, with calmness, with the best food they ever had. And then that can sort of change the way that they feel about it.
Yeah.
Because this is ultimately not obedience training. It's not. We're changing the way that they feel.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we know that we took a lot of your barking advice and it's resulted in much better behaviors with Carson.
Yay!
I mean, the trash truck still comes and he still has a reaction to it,
Yeah.
but it's so much easier to calm him down now than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yay. Fantastic.
I'm sure that this will work too. So we're gonna re-listen to this episode a bunch of times, and
Yes.
I'm so glad. So there's a lot of elements to it. It's simple, but it's also because it's simple, it's easy to do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The thing to remember. So remember, we started with the vet
Mm-hmm.
all the way back at the end now when we've done all this in place is if you can't find an under threshold place to work on this, then you need to see a behaviorist and get some medication involved.
That makes sense.
The medication is not going to fix it. And a really good veterinary behaviorist or behaviorist actually wants to know that you're working with a trainer. Like it could be a 3-way appointment, bring your trainer to the appointment or have them zoom in.
Yeah.
Because all you're trying to do, it's sort of like someone who's having a panic attack or has an anxiety disorder. Like sometimes you need medication just to keep you even enough to work through it, if that makes sense.
It does. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's certainly not every dog that needs it. It's not a solution to just, I'm going to give him this med and everything's going to be fine. But if you're starting to work on it and you're like, wow, I tried 50 feet, I tried 100 feet. It's impossible for me to keep what's freaking them out far enough away to start working on this, then you're going to have to get some medication involved.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for this information. This is going to be so helpful, I know, to us and hopefully to everybody listening. So, Susan, what's next for you and the Doggy Dojo? What are y'all working on and planning on?
Yeah, so I actually am looking at transitioning into behavior consulting.
Nice.
And it's just sort of the next level up from dog trainer, where dog training is more that obedience thing or getting a puppy potty trained and starting those skills. And behavior consulting is more for behavior modification. So these things like reactivity, which I'm seeing a lot of, or extreme fear, things like that. And so I am actually working towards a certification with the IAABC for that, which I'm hoping to do sometime this year, maybe early next year. Depends on how long it takes to do the case studies and things.
Wow, cool.
But it's great because, as I'm starting to see all these elements of really doing like a whole behavior change plan, that's kind of where my passion is lying.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think it's great too, because just, every time we talk with you, you're really truly looking for the root cause, the animal, why the animal.
Yeah.
So it really does lend to this behavioral therapy, if you will, or something. So I think it'd be a good fit.
Yeah. At the beginning, you always think it's like, oh, do this and then that. And that works. That's for operant conditioning. That'll work to teach a skill. But I'm really more interested in like the emotional and holistic view of the dog.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll let you know. They're working on regulating the dog training industry. So we may see some more things where you have to get like a license to practice and things like that. So some interesting things coming in the next couple of years, I think, for the industry.
Wonderful.
And eventually all your certifications will be longer than your name.
I know some people that it's like so many letters behind their name. And it's interesting because you can really, even though it's an unregulated industry, there's a lot of certifications you can get.
Yeah.
And you can really specialize. Like there are people who specialize in separation anxiety, and you can get a certification for that. But nobody, unless you're a dog trainer, knows what the letters mean.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's good that anybody that's interested and dedicated to continuing education is doing the right thing in my book.
It's been a pleasure learning from you. Once again, you always feel like we've taken a master class just talking to you for 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are sweet. I always love talking to you.
Well, thank you. Now we have a bit of fun. As always, we have our world famous Zoomies round of questions, a bunch of silly questions back to back.
Oh, I forgot about this.
So you ready for your silly questions?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, paper calendar or smartphone app?
Oh, smartphone app for sure.
Cool. So what's your go-to salad dressing?
Ooh, I just got into Green Goddess salad dressing.
Oh, yum.
So good.
Yes, that's a great one.
If you were to get a pet reptile, what species would it be?
Oh, like a little gecko?
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Yeah. I have issues with reptiles.
Oh,
There's not too many I would want to bring into my house.
I feel the same. That's great. Would you rather be able to move things with your mind or read other people's minds?
Oh, that's interesting. I think move things with my mind because I don't think we really do want to know what people think. I don't think we want to open that drawer and see inside.
I'm so with you, Susan. When we were writing this out, I had that same thought process. I was like, I don't want to know everything everybody's thinking.
Yeah, like it sounds good, but no, probably not.
Hang glider or hot air balloon?
Hot air balloon. I've never done either one. I'd love to do a hot air balloon. I went skydiving a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it was terrifying. Like, I'm glad I did it, but I will never do it again.
And would you rather be chronically underdressed or overdressed?
I must want to be underdressed because that's what I do every day. I haven't put on makeup maybe more than a handful of times in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The dogs don't judge.
They're cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. I used to work big corporation where I was required to wear makeup at work.
Wow.
And so I had to wear makeup every single day. And it's just not something that I miss at all. I have a shirt that says Coffee Dogs Sweatpants, and that's pretty much my life now.
It sounds nice. Nice and comfy. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's our silly round of questions. We are all done, but thank you so much for being with us today, Susan. Remind us what your website is and how people can reach you.
Yes. So I am at www.doggydojopodcast.com, and doggy is spelled with a Y. So Dogggy. And I'm at Susan Light LA on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. It's always so nice talking to you guys. Thanks for having me.
We learned some invaluable tips today to work with Carson on his leash reactivity. And I know you are taking away some helpful advice for you and your pups as well. And these highly reactive times, we can all use a few tricks to help us stay calm. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn from the content? Or did you just have a good, relatable laugh? Well, now what? It's time to subscribe, follow, keep listening, and give a positive review on the Apple Podcast app. Then share the podcast with other puppy parents. This will allow us to connect you and your friends with fun, dog-loving content week after week. Until next time, this is Becca and Gabe, the Jack Russell parents.
Say bye, Carson.
We'd love to connect with you online at jackrussellparents.com or on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at JRT Podcasts. That's at JRT for Jack Russell Terrier Podcast.
The Jack Russell Parents Podcast is produced by Earball Audio.
Jack Russell Parents is brought to you in part by Super Chewer. From the makers of BarkBox, Super Chewer is a themed monthly delivery of toys and treats made especially for dogs who play harder and demand a challenge. Simply go to jackrussellparents.com and click the Super Chewer link to enjoy their great offers while also supporting our podcast.